Hey guys, how we doing? Manthis here and welcome back to another video. Now today, yes, we have got to talk about the apocalypse. We have got to talk about the fact that the relics of the past have been completely kiboshed, completely nerfed. Blizzard have swung with their nerf bat and knocked it out of the park. The rumours are true. On the PTR as of today, you can see that there's now a significant difference to the cost of crafting relics of the past. Each and every relic of the past, regardless of the expansion that you're in, now is going to use an additional vendor material when it comes to crafting it. In many cases, dramatically increasing the price of actually crafting the relics, so much so to the point that the vendor shuffles that people had found and had done their goblin things to try and find out the best way to make gold with these. Basically, it's all in the can right now. But is it the end of the world? Ultimately, no. I've seen a few things running around the internet, especially on the subreddit for this. Both the WoW Economy subreddit and the WoW Economy Discord have been popping off with lots of people complaining, lots of people sort of somewhat concerned that they now have guild banks full of especially rune cloth and absolutely no idea what to do with it. So we're going to look at 3 different options in this video to see exactly what we can do with all of this cloth that we have now acquired. Now, first and foremost, an option that many people have chose to do is to just dump it all on the auction house and try and get it sold as quick as possible. Now, there are some pros and cons to this one, unfortunately mostly cons, and the downside of trying to do this is the likelihood that you're actually going to sell it and recuperate much of your gold at this point is virtually none. There are only going to be very, very select few people on select realms that are not aware of this nerf. Anybody that is aware of the nerf is not going to be buying it off the auction house, and anybody that didn't really know about these relics of the past in the first place is unlikely to buy large quantities of these materials in the first place. So actually selling it now is really not going to do anything for you. You're very, very unlikely to make your gold back in doing this method. So that leads me on to method 2. Method 2 is to simply just hold on to it. Now, this may not necessarily be so feasible for people depending on how much of it they've got. Some people may have just a small amount of it, then just throw it in a bank somewhere, throw it in your reagent tab. If you've got significant numbers of these, and I've seen numbers floating around in the hundreds of thousands of actual materials, you're likely going to have to set yourself a couple of alts, get yourself some guilds on those, and just leave it all in some guild banks. That's realistically the most sensible approach. But why would you be saving it? Well, ultimately, the price of these materials, if everybody out there is dumping them on the auction house right now, it's going to completely crash the market for them. We've already seen on some servers deep sea satin going for like 50 silver a piece right now. Absolutely bonkers. But if you hold on to this for a few months, wait until this craze has gone down, wait until it's died down, look at the amount of it that's on your auction house, and when you see there be a gap in the market for it, then just try and sell a little bit at a time. There will always be people buying these low-level materials, usually for the purpose of crafting transmog items to try and sell. Because of that, holding on to it for a little while, selling it slowly, selling it at a later date is more than likely going to get you your return on your gold. Hopefully, you are not buying these materials at stupidly high prices anyway. The smart ones out there will only have invested very, very small amounts of gold into this, and so it shouldn't be too much of an issue to put it all in a guild bank and just hold on for it for a while. That takes me to option number 3, and in my opinion, the best option to go by, and you now have the best opportunity to start getting into crafting low-level transmog items. Transmog, for anybody that's tried to farm transmog and sell transmog, will know it's a slow burner. You need to have a large inventory of items, and if you're posting 250, 500, 1,000 items on the auction house, you will get a few sales each and every day. It's slow, but it does work. People are always looking to fill those collection tabs and sort of get those last bits of transmog that they need. So get into crafting, open up your tailor, open up your leatherworker, open up your blacksmith, and start looking at some of the gear that you can craft that's going to use some of these materials. Yes, the likelihood is you might need to actually go out and invest even more gold to craft these items, But if they've got a nice healthy profit margin, then it means you only need to sell a few of them, and that will pay for an awful lot of your investment in the original cloth. Ah, we have a new sub. Thank you for that. Welcome to the channel. Hope you're enjoying. Now, there are some long-term lessons you can take from this. Realistically, you should only ever be investing what you're willing to lose. And this is something that I've seen a fair few people talk about, and it's slightly worrying in terms of the fact that people are throwing all of their gold into doing this, being left with virtually no gold and a whole load of cloth, and are now going, well, I'm totally screwed. That, unfortunately, is just a real bad decision that was made initially, and there's virtually nothing that can be done about that, apart from hoping that you learn that you should really never invest more than maybe 10% of the liquid gold that you have in any single venture, because if for some reason it doesn't work, you don't want to be left in that awkward situation. But what I have done is, considering there's a whole bunch of materials that some people are going to have, we need to kind of look at exactly what we can do with these materials. Now, I really have to reiterate, these are not gold making opportunities. These are simply ways for you to hopefully recuperate some of the gold that you've spent buying materials, or for the time that you've spent farming those materials. Now, one of the most common ones, of course, totally down to the brown linen pants, is going to be linen cloth or either the bolts if you've spent some time crafting them already. Unfortunately, with linen cloth, your options are kind of limited. There's not so many items that you can craft with linen that are going to be super attractive to people trying to buy transmog. There is the benefit that you need 115 of it just to craft, just to level up your vanilla tailoring. So there's going to be a few people over time that are going to do that. Shirts are also a good thing that can be crafted with linen cloth. You can usually find that there's a few different coloured varieties of shirt, and they will sell quite nicely early on. Jumps down to Mage Weave. There's actually a really cool black Mage Weave set that has a really high versatility stat on it, which is good for low level PvPers. If you have that entire set crafted and you have it listed up on the auction house, making sure that you have the whole set listed is quite important, because people, if they are interested in this, will want to buy the whole set. Get that up on the auction house. That's a possibility to use some of the Mage Weave. Tuxedo gear sells pretty nicely. It doesn't sell for a huge amount anymore, certainly not as much as it used to, but for bank halts and that sort of stuff, people like to have the tuxedo transmog. And of course, with Mage Weave, you get the ability to craft a few more shirts as well. Moving on to Netherweave. Netherweave was an item that was stacked up pretty heavily in similar to Rune Cloth in terms of the fact that it was used to craft the Relic 5s. Fortunately, no more. But with your Netherweave, you've got Netherweave bags. Netherweave bags are 16 slot bags. They're not huge, but they're cheap, and that's the main advantage of them. You can always sell these in steady flow. It does take a little bit of time to craft the Netherweave bags, because you've got to craft the bolts first, and then you've got to turn the bolts into bags. And of course, it takes a bit of inventory space, as you can only have one bag in each inventory slot. But make sure you've always got some Netherweave bags on the auction house, and especially since we're going into an expansion, a new expansion, people are going to be leveling new characters. You'll be surprised at just how quickly any bag of any size will sell. So that should burn through some of your Netherweave quite quickly. Plus, there is also a nice little Netherweave cloth set that even potentially when you throw some relics at it, might actually be, because it's an entire set, might be valuable to some people out there. So give that a go as well. Rune Cloth, unfortunately, Rune Cloth is going to be a difficult one. There's one item that I did spot earlier to downstream called the Cinder Cloth Pants. Now this actually requires a pattern to be able to craft it, which is why the sell rate is really good on it. And additionally, it's really cool because it's basically some skimpy red sort of tights, which you throw that on a female night elf and go to Moonglade and you know what happens. So there's a few sort of cool little transmog items you can make with the Rune Cloth, but be aware, if you want to throw your Rune Cloth into transmog, there's a good chance that you're going to need to farm up some additional items to craft the transmog pieces in the first place. But they look good and they're good, strong sellers, so look into that. For all of the monks out there that spend hours and hours disenchanting, getting your greater or lesser magic essences, you really are shit out of luck, and that's all I can say about that one. maybe craft yourself up a few enchants and keep your fingers crossed that you can sell a few enchants. But realistically, especially at the quantity of them that I've seen people have acquired, unfortunately with Greater Magic Essences, there was really nothing I could find that was going to be super useful for you. You are kind of out of luck with that one. And very similar with Tempest Hide. Tempest Hide, even though it's a current expansion, I can still say current because it's still technically BFA. The difficulty with Tempest Hide is it was always had way more supply than it did demand, mainly because the bottleneck when crafting items with Tempest Hide ended up being Expulsum and not the Tempest Hide as well. Just hope that you haven't stockpiled too much of it, but do keep some aside because you will use it for crafting some items from the BFA expansion, even when we get into Shadowlands. Sumptuous Fur was one of the last ones that I'll talk about. Sumptuous Fur is really easy to get rid of if you stockpile this one. Dump it all straight back into your garrison, either for the purpose of Hexweave bags, or if you've got a scribe hut, you can make the cards of omens. Is a good way to get rid of some of that. And lastly and finally, Deep Sea Satin. This is crazy cheap on a lot of the auction houses now, but this is actually the only gold making opportunity that's on this list. Buying up this Deep Sea Satin as people dump it on the auction house now is actually not a bad idea, simply because you still need 30 Deep Sea Satin to make a basic Deep Sea Satin bag. And although we're getting 2 new bags in Shadowlands that are of similar quantities and are ultimately going to be similar in price, with the quantity of Deep Sea Satin that you can pick up right now and the just absolute rock bottom price of it, Deep Sea Satin bags might not be a bad investment going forward. Once again, we spoke about Netherweave bags earlier, Ember Silk Cloth bags, Deep Sea Satin bags, Hexweave bags. Going into an expansion, people are leveling alts. Bags, bags, bags. They sell in boatloads. So then guys, that's really all I can say about the Relic of the Past nerf. It's a bit of a shame that it happened literally only 5-6 days before the pre-patch goes live. But all I can say is I hope you didn't invest too heavily in it, and maybe you learn a lesson for next time, that sometimes when things do look just that little bit too good to be true, they often are, and it only took one swing of the Blizzard Nerf bat and it was out of there. But then guys, I'll leave you with that information. If it's been helpful for you, give the video a thumbs up. Click the subscribe button if you're new around here. And guys, I'll see you next time. Peace.